Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive?
Always ready.
Awesome. So today we're going to be tackling a topic that hits close to home for pretty much everyone.
Oh, yeah.
It's all about, well, rising grocery prices.
Okay, yeah. Everyone's feeling that.
Exactly. And we all see those prices going up, but have you ever thought about the soil beneath our feet? What it has to do with all of this?
I mean, it's not the first thing that comes to mind at the checkout line.
Right. But get this, you sent over this Newsweek article and this Reddit thread that kind of blew my mind about this whole unproductive soil thing. And some of the comments, let me tell you, people are not buying it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Newsweek tends to, lean towards the dramatic side sometimes. And Reddit, well, that's a whole other beast.
Yeah, totally. But that's what I love about these deep dives, right? We get to dig into these seemingly alarmist headlines, see what the science actually says, and then get a pulse on how people are reacting.
That's the key, right? Getting the full picture.
Yeah, exactly. So Newsweek starts off with this pretty daunting statistic. They claim that 33% of Earth's soil is already degraded.
Wow, 33%. That's
It gets worse. The UN's Food and Agriculture Organization estimates that by 2050, that number could jump to 90%.
90%. I mean, that's almost all of it. That's a huge problem. It's like we're just stripping away the very foundation of our food system.
Yeah. And Newsweek has this crazy visual, this map showing 95% of U.S. soil degraded in under 30 years. I mean, 95%. It makes you wonder what we're even eating.
Right. I mean, soil isn't like, some magical resource that just replenishes itself overnight. It takes time, a lot of time to form, and we're degrading it way faster than it can recover.
And to make matters worse, there was this quote from a former regenerative farmer, Anand Ethirajulu, that stuck with me. He says the U.S. loses billions of metric tons of topsoil every year, costing the nation $67 billion annually.
Oof, that's a hefty price tag. And it's not just about the money, right? Soil degradation affects everything. The quality of our food, the livelihoods of farmers, and even the stability of entire ecosystems.
Absolutely. It's all interconnected.
Yeah.
So, okay, we get it. The situation is grim, but what's actually causing all this degradation?
Well, Newsweek breaks it down into three main culprits: overfarming, climate change, and deforestation.
And each one sounds pretty bad on its own.
Oh, they are.
Yeah.
Let's start with overfarming. Imagine a farmer planting the same crop year after year, trying to squeeze every last bit of yield out of the land. What happens?
I'm guessing the soil gets exhausted, like all the nutrients get used up.
Exactly. It's like running your car without ever changing the oil. Eventually, the engine just gives out. Same thing with soil. It gets depleted, loses its structure, and becomes more vulnerable to things like erosion.
Oh, right, erosion. That's when the topsoil, the good stuff, gets washed away, right?
Yep. And climate change just throws fuel on that fire. Think about it. More extreme weather events, heavier rainfall, stronger winds, all of that accelerates erosion and can lead to something called salinization.
Salinization. That sounds like a bad thing.
It is, especially for plants.
Yeah.
Basically, the soil becomes too salty, which makes it harder for crops to absorb water and nutrients.
So it's like a double whammy. The soil is already depleted from overfarming, and then climate change just makes it even harder for anything to grow.
Exactly. And then you have deforestation,
Mm-hmm.
cutting down forests for agriculture or development.
Right, but trees are good for the soil, right?
They're essential. Tree roots help stabilize the soil, prevent erosion, and they provide vital organic matter as they decompose. When you remove forests, you're basically stripping away that protective layer and disrupting the delicate balance of the ecosystem.
It's all starting to make sense now, but it's pretty overwhelming. I mean, it sounds like the soil degradation thing is a huge problem, and it's impacting everything from what we eat to the cost of our groceries.
It is a big problem, no doubt about it. But before we spiral into despair, let's remember that Reddit thread you mentioned. People are pushing back, offering alternative explanations, even questioning the whole premise of the Newsweek article.
Yeah, some of those comments were pretty harsh, like, this article is awful. Another one said, sounds like a headline made up to cover price rises due to tariffs.
And you know what? They might have a point. Sometimes media outlets do sensationalize things, and tariffs, they definitely have an impact on prices. We can't ignore that.
So maybe it's not as simple as unproductive soil equals higher grocery prices. Maybe it's a combination of factors, like Newsweek is highlighting one piece of a much larger puzzle.
Exactly. And that's what we need to keep in mind as we dive deeper into this. Soil degradation is a real issue, but it's not the only factor at play.
Okay, so we've got this complex interplay of soil health, climate change, economic policies, and public perception. Where do we go from here?
Well, first, we need to acknowledge that complexity. We can't just dismiss one side or the other.
Right, it's about looking at the whole picture.
Mhm.
So let's get into that. What does Newsweek have to say about potential solutions? Because honestly, I'm feeling a little bit, uh, I don't know, doomed after all this doom and gloom talk about soil. So they've got us all worried about the soil, but what can we actually do about it? Newsweek throws around terms like sustainable agriculture and cover cropping, and I gotta be honest, I wasn't really sure what half of it meant.
Yeah, it can definitely sound like a whole different language, but it's actually pretty straightforward once you break it down. A lot of these solutions are really about working with nature, not against it.
Okay, that makes sense. So, like, what about this cover cropping thing? What's that all about?
Well, imagine, instead of leaving the soil bare between harvests, farmers plant things like clover or rye. These cover crops, they act like a natural fertilizer. They improve the soil structure, help prevent erosion, and even add nutrients back into the ground.
So it's like giving the soil a protective layer, kind of like a green blanket.
Exactly. And then there's this thing called reduced tillage. That's where farmers, instead of constantly plowing and turning over the soil, which can actually disrupt its natural structure, they try to minimize disturbance as much as possible.
So less plowing, healthier soil.
Yep. It helps retain moisture, improve water infiltration, and it's actually better for those beneficial microorganisms that live in the soil.
Huh. It's like we're learning to let the soil breathe and do its thing, right?
Exactly. And then there's this whole concept of regenerative agriculture. This one's a bit more complex, but basically it's about farming in a way that actually rebuilds soil health and fertility over time.
So it's not just about sustaining, it's about actually regenerating. That sounds pretty amazing.
It is. It often involves things like crop rotation, integrating livestock grazing, and minimizing the use of synthetic fertilizers and pesticides.
Okay, so it's like a more holistic approach, creating a more balanced and sustainable ecosystem on the farm. Makes sense. Newsweek also mentioned something about soil monitoring technology. Is that like high-tech soil testing?
You could say that. There are all sorts of new technologies that allow farmers to collect data on their soil, like moisture levels, nutrient content, and even soil composition.
So it's like taking the guesswork out of it.
Pretty much. It helps farmers make more informed decisions about what to plant, where to plant it, and how to best manage their resources. It's about optimizing everything and minimizing waste.
That sounds super cool, but, switching to all these sustainable practices probably isn't cheap. How do we get more farmers on board with this?
Well, that's where policy comes in. Newsweek actually highlighted the importance of government subsidies for farmers who adopt these greener methods.
Oh, so like giving them financial incentives to go the sustainable route.
Exactly. You can be a game changer, making these practices more accessible and appealing for farmers who might be hesitant to make the switch otherwise.
Okay, so it's not just about individual farmers doing the right thing. It's about creating a system that supports and rewards those choices. Speaking of doing the right thing, remember that Reddit comment about planting radishes in the fall?
Oh yeah, that was a great example of a simple solution that can make a big difference. The commenter was saying how that one change significantly improved their soil health and led to much better yields the following year.
It's pretty amazing how something so simple can have such a big impact. And it kind of brings it all back down to earth. We've been talking about these big systemic issues, but even small changes can make a difference.
Absolutely. Every little bit helps. But I think, after all this talk about soil degradation and rising prices, the question on everyone's mind is, what does this all mean for me? Like, I'm not a farmer. I'm just trying to buy groceries without breaking the bank.
Right, like what can I actually do about this?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the answer is, well, it's a bit of both. Yes, there are these huge systemic challenges like climate change and unsustainable agricultural practices, things that feel way bigger than any one person. But at the same time, every single choice we make as consumers has an impact.
So you're saying even though I'm not out there plowing fields, my choices at the grocery store still matter.
Absolutely. Think about it. When you choose to buy, say, organic produce, or you look for those labels that say regeneratively grown or fair trade, you're sending a message. You're supporting farmers who are doing things the right way.
Okay, so I can vote with my wallet, so to speak. What else can I do?
Well, supporting local farmers is huge. Farmers markets, community-supported agriculture programs, things like that. Not only are you getting fresher taste to your food, but you're also cutting down on the environmental impact of transporting food all over the place.
Right, that makes sense. And I guess being mindful of food waste.
Oh, that's a big one. So much food gets thrown away,
Um,
and all that wasted food represents wasted resources, wasted energy, and, ultimately, wasted money.
yeah, I'm definitely guilty of that sometimes. So we've got conscious consumerism, supporting local, reducing waste. Anything else?
Don't underestimate the power of conversation. Talk to your friends, your family, share what you're learning about soil health and sustainable agriculture. The more people who are aware of these issues, the more pressure we can put on policymakers to actually make those systemic changes we were talking about earlier.
So it's not just about what I buy or what I eat. It's about raising awareness, getting people talking, maybe even like advocating for change on a larger scale.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're all part of this system and our choices have ripple effects.
Wow. I gotta say, we started this deep dive feeling pretty doom and gloom about this unproductive soil thing, but now I'm actually feeling kind of hopeful. Like there's actually stuff we can do about this.
That's the spirit. Knowledge is power,
Right.
right? And once you understand the problem and the potential solutions, it's a lot easier to feel empowered to make a difference.
So to sum it all up for our listeners out there, this whole unproductive soil thing, it's a big deal, but it's not a lost cause.
Not at all. There are solutions, both big and small. We can support sustainable farming practices, choose our food wisely, reduce waste, have those tough conversations, and advocate for change.
We can all be part of the solution. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, we hope you're walking away not just with a better understanding of soil and its importance, but also with a sense of hope and maybe even a little bit of inspiration to get out there and make a difference.
We can do this.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and remember, every little bit counts.